A flight attendant tried to humiliate a young black woman and kick her off a plane. She thought she had all the power. What she didn't know is that in just 7 minutes, a single phone call would make that young woman's family the new owners of the entire airline. It's the kind of karmic justice we all dream about, right? A swift, decisive smackdown of some ugly prejudice. And while the incredible outcome you're about to hear is a fictional dramatization, the injustice that started it all is heartbreakingly real. The phenomenon of flying while black is a documented and painful reality for countless travelers. In the real world, passengers who face this kind of discrimination don't have a magic button for instant justice. Instead, they face humiliation and a long, exhausting battle through the legal system. This story is for them, and for anyone who has ever felt powerless against someone on a petty power trip. It's a story about what we wish would happen, inspired by the things that happen far too often. Section 1, The Setup. Our story begins, figuratively speaking, at 30,000 feet, in the hushed, rarefied air of the first-class cabin on Global Voyager Airlines Flight 765, a non-stop from New York to London. The vibe was pure, curated tranquility. You know the scene, the scent of warm towels, the gentle clink of ice in real glasses, the muted hum of engines ready to leap across an ocean. In seat 2A sat Maya Washington. At 22, she had that quiet confidence that people sometimes mistake for being standoffish. Fresh off of earning her master's in architectural design from a top university, she was on the verge of a brilliant career. This trip wasn't just a vacation, it was a victory lap. She'd just landed a dream job at a prestigious London firm, beating out hundreds of other applicants. This flight was a gift from her proud dad, a man who firmly believed that hard work should be rewarded with moments of serious comfort. Maya wasn't dressed to the nines. She wore a stylish, minimalist tracksuit from one of those athleisure brands that costs a fortune to look so simple. Her hair was styled in intricate braids, a work of art framing a makeup-free face. She had on a pair of noise-canceling headphones, lost in a podcast about biomimicry in architecture. She was in her own little bubble of peace and excitement. When a friendly flight attendant named Ben approached, she paused her podcast and offered a warm, genuine smile. "Could I please have some sparkling water with lime?" she asked, her voice soft but clear. "Of course, right away," he replied, his own smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. He saw a polite young woman, a customer. Simple as that. He returned a moment later with her drink, and she thanked him with the kind of sincerity that makes a tough service job feel worth it. She took a sip, the bubbles a cool counterpoint to the buzz of excitement inside her. She was on her way. The future looked bright, and from her seat in 2A, it looked beautiful. She was minding her own business, a picture of quiet contentment. But not everyone sees what's actually there. Some people see the world through a filter of their own prejudice. Enter Karen Fisher. Karen was the lead purser, a title she'd held for 15 of her 20 years with the airline. She wore her uniform like armor and her authority like a weapon. To her, first class wasn't a luxury cabin for paying customers, it was her kingdom, and she was its queen. She patrolled the aisle with a stiff posture, her eyes scanning for anyone who didn't fit her narrow idea of who belonged there. Her eyes swept over the businessman in 1A, already hammering away on his laptop. Important, busy, belongs. She gave a curt nod to the older couple in 3C and 3D, clearly on an anniversary trip, wealthy, quiet, belong. And then her eyes landed on Maya in 2A. And she stopped. It was almost invisible, a flicker in her eyes, a slight tightening of her lips. She saw a young black girl in what she decided were glorified sweatpants, with headphones on, looking entirely too comfortable. Karen's internal, prejudice-fueled calculator started whirring. She doesn't belong here. It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. The first pass was silent. Karen walked by Maya's seat, slowing her pace just enough for it to be noticed. Her eyes darted from the seat number to Maya's face, down to her clothes, and back up. It was a silent audit, a challenge. An expression of suspicion and disdain flashed across her face before being tucked away behind a professional mask. She said nothing, but the message had been sent. Maya felt it. It was a familiar prickle on the back of her neck, a feeling she'd been trained to recognize since she was a little girl. The look that questions your very presence. For a moment, her peaceful bubble was pierced. Did I do something? Bag is stowed, seatbelt is on. Maybe I'm imagining it. Maybe she's just having a bad day. Maya chose to give her the benefit of the doubt, a choice she'd had to make hundreds of times before. She took a deep breath, another sip of her water, and tried to shake it off. She was here to celebrate, and she wouldn't let a stranger's bad attitude ruin it. But the seed of unease was planted. The calm was broken. Section 2, The Rising Action. That first dismissive glance from Karen was just the opening shot. Next came a move that, to Maya, was as loud as a fire alarm. Karen began the pre-departure beverage service. With a practiced, almost theatrical flair, she offered champagne and orange juice to the passengers. She served the man in 1A, the couple across the aisle, the passenger behind Maya. But when she reached seat 2A, she glided right past as if Maya and her seat were invisible. Maya waited, thinking it had to be a mistake. But when Karen turned back toward the galley, her back now squarely to Maya, the intention was unmistakable. Maya, determined not to be intimidated, tried to get her attention. "Excuse me," she said, her voice quiet but firm. Karen, just a few feet away, didn't turn. She pretended not to hear, busying herself in the galley. The sting of the intentional slight was sharp. It was meant to make her feel small. Just then, Ben, the kind attendant from before, came down the aisle. He saw the empty space on Maya's table and the hurt on her face. He glanced at Karen in the galley. He put two and two together. Without a word, he poured a glass of champagne and brought it to Maya. "My apologies for the delay," he said, his voice low. His eyes, though, said so much more. They apologized not just for the drink, but for his colleague's behavior. He was an ally in a war she hadn't asked to fight. "Thank you, Ben," Maya said, her voice full of a gratitude that went far beyond the champagne. His small kindness was a lifeline. The cabin doors were about to close. The captain announced their imminent departure. In those final moments, Maya decided to make a quick video call to her dad to thank him one last time. She put one earbud in, keeping her voice to a whisper. His warm, smiling face filled the screen. "There's my superstar," he beamed. "Hi, Dad," Maya whispered, giving him a quick glimpse of the cabin. "It's amazing. I feel so spoiled. Thanks again for this." "You deserve every bit of it, sweetheart," he said. "Have the time of your life. Call me when you land." The call lasted less than 45 seconds. A sweet, private moment. But it was all the ammunition Karen needed. She swooped in like a predator. "Ma'am. All electronic devices need to be in airplane mode. We have made this announcement twice," she snapped. Her voice wasn't just loud, it was performatively loud, designed to grab attention and publicly shame her. The businessman looked up. The couple across the aisle exchanged a look. The cabin was now her stage. Maya's cheeks flushed. She immediately ended the call. "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry," she said, genuinely apologetic. "I was just saying goodbye to my father. Putting it on airplane mode right now." She was respectful, compliant, and even held up her phone to show she was doing as asked. But Karen wasn't interested in compliance. She was interested in a fight. This was never about a phone. "I don't believe you," Karen said, her voice dripping with contempt. "I have had my eye on you since you boarded. People like you always think the rules don't apply to them." Those three words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. "People like you." The subtext was no longer subtext. It was just text, flashing in neon letters for the whole cabin to see. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. It was the kind of raw, undisguised prejudice that still shocks, no matter how often you brace for it. People like me? Maya repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. What exactly do you mean by that? I mean people who are disruptive, Karen spat back, her eyes narrowed. People who think a first-class ticket gives them the right to endanger this aircraft. You are a security risk. Maya was stunned. A security risk? For a 45-second phone call. The accusation was so absurd she couldn't even form a response. She looked around the cabin, a silent plea for someone, anyone, to say this was insane. But she was met with a sea of averted gazes and uncomfortable silence. The businessman was suddenly fascinated by his spreadsheets. The couple was now studying the safety card like it was the most interesting thing they'd ever read. The bystander effect was in full, suffocating force. Ben, the younger attendant, took a hesitant step forward. Karen, maybe we can just stay out of this, Ben. Karen cut him off. I am the lead purser. I am responsible for the safety of this cabin, and I am making the call. This passenger is non-compliant. She is a threat. It was a complete fantasy, spun from pure malice. Maya tried one last time. This is a profound misunderstanding, she said, her voice shaking but her composure remarkably intact. I have complied with every instruction. I am not a threat. Can we please just handle this professionally? But Karen was on a power trip. She lifted the intercom to the cockpit. Captain Miller, this is Purser Fisher. We have a non-compliant passenger in 2A who is refusing to follow crew instructions and causing a disturbance. I am requesting a gate agent for immediate removal. A disturbance. Refusing to follow instructions. Lies. But from the cockpit, Captain Miller had no reason to doubt his lead purser. He had a schedule to keep. Understood, Karen, his voice crackled back. Gate agent is on the way. The words hit Maya like a punch. Removed. Kicked off a plane. The humiliation was overwhelming. A minute later, a flustered gate agent appeared. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me, he said softly. Maya knew protesting further was pointless. It would only create the disturbance Karen had invented. With a heavy heart, she stood up, moving with a deliberate grace that was a stark contrast to the ugly scene Karen had created. She pulled her carry-on from the overhead bin, her hand steady despite the rage and hurt inside her. She didn't look at Karen. She didn't look at the other passengers. She held her head high, her dignity the only shield she had left. As she stepped onto the cold jet bridge, she pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking now. She sent a single text to her father. They're kicking me off the flight. The flight attendant's name is Karen. Then the cabin door clicked shut behind her, leaving her alone. Section 3, The Climax and Resolution. Standing on that jet bridge, Maya felt a wave of helplessness wash over her. The humiliation was a physical ache. The injustice was a bitter taste in her mouth. She'd done nothing wrong, yet here she was, branded a threat and thrown off a plane. Her phone buzzed. It was her dad calling back, his face etched with concern. Maya? What on earth is going on? The tears she'd held back now filled her eyes. Dad, they kicked me off the plane. A flight attendant, she said I was a security risk because I was on the phone with you. Her father, David Washington, listened. He was known for his calm, analytical demeanor, a trait that had made him a titan in the world of private equity. He didn't get emotional. He solved problems. Okay, sweetheart, he said, his voice a steady anchor. Don't move. Stay right where you are. I'm on a conference call with my team. Let me handle this. This was no ordinary conference call. For the past 6 months, his firm had been in intense negotiations to acquire Global Voyager Airlines' parent company, a legacy airline drowning in debt. Just 10 minutes before Maya's text, he'd gotten the message: the final wire has cleared. The ink is drying. Congratulations, you just bought an airline. David Washington was, for all intents and purposes, the new majority owner of the very airline that was humiliating his daughter. He muted his call. Gentlemen, something's come up. Get me the direct satellite line to the cockpit of GVA Flight 765. Now. His team scrambled. Within 2 minutes, they had him patched through. In the cockpit, Captain Miller was annoyed by the delay. Suddenly, the satellite phone rang, a sound reserved for emergencies. This is Captain Miller. Captain Miller, my name is David Washington. The voice on the other end was calm, but carried the weight of unmistakable authority. My firm finalized its controlling acquisition of Global Voyager's parent corporation about 7 minutes ago. As of this moment, I am the new majority owner of this airline. Stunned silence. The captain stared at his co-pilot, whose eyes were as wide as dinner plates. David Washington didn't wait. His voice turned to ice. I understand a passenger in seat 2A, a Ms. Maya Washington, was just removed from your flight by your lead purser. Ms. Washington is my daughter. Is that correct? A cold dread crept up the captain's spine. Yes, sir. That is correct. There was a report of a non-compliant passenger. Captain, David interrupted, his voice sharp as a razor. There was a failure of basic human decency and a gross act of racial discrimination. Here's what's going to happen. You are going to personally walk to that jet bridge and escort my daughter back to her first-class seat with a full apology. Is that understood? Yes, sir, Miller whispered. Furthermore, your lead flight attendant, Ms. Karen Fisher, is to be immediately relieved of her duties. She will disembark, and her employment with my airline is terminated, effective immediately. Your junior attendant, Ben Carter, will take over as lead purser. Is any part of that unclear? No, sir. Perfectly clear. Good. See to it. The line went dead. Captain Miller unbuckled himself and walked out of the cockpit. He found Karen in the galley, looking smug. And then I told the captain she was a security risk, and that was that, she was saying with a smirk. Karen, Captain Miller said, his voice flat. Come with me. Confused, she followed him to the cabin door. He opened it and stepped onto the jet bridge where Maya was still standing. He approached Maya first. Ms. Washington, he began, his voice formal and mortified. On behalf of Global Voyager Airlines, I offer you my most sincere and profound apologies. A terrible, inexcusable mistake has been made. We would be honored if you would please rejoin us. Maya stared, bewildered. Then, Captain Miller turned to a gaping Karen. Karen, gather your things. Your service on this flight is no longer required. In fact, your employment with Global Voyager Airlines is terminated, effective immediately. Leave the aircraft. The color drained from Karen's face. What? You can't do this. I have a union. On what grounds? The captain looked from Karen's horrified face to Maya, who was slowly putting it all together. On the grounds of gross professional misconduct, he said, as per the direct, personal order of the new owner of this airline. He gave a tiny, almost invisible nod toward Maya. Karen's eyes followed his gesture. She looked at Maya, then back at the captain, as the impossible truth dawned on her. The world had just flipped upside down, and she was on the losing end. Wordlessly, Maya Washington walked past the captain, past a shell-shocked Karen, and back onto the plane. The whispering cabin fell silent. They watched as the young woman who'd been cruelly ejected returned. They watched as Karen was barred from re-entering, her face a mask of disbelief. The businessman who'd been hiding behind his laptop now had the decency to look ashamed. Maya returned to seat 2A. Ben approached cautiously, his face a mix of awe and relief. "Ms. Washington," he said softly. "I am so sorry for what you experienced. Is there anything at all I can get for you?" Maya looked up and gave him the first real smile she'd had in an hour. "A sparkling water would be wonderful, Ben." "Thank you." The power dynamic hadn't just shifted, it had been seismically inverted. Justice had been delivered, not through a complaint form, but instantly, decisively, and right in front of the people who had silently watched the injustice happen. While Maya's story had a resolution of almost mythical satisfaction, her initial experience is a tragically common reality. The phenomenon of "flying while black" is not just a hashtag, it's a lived experience of humiliation. Real people, like Dr. Brianna Hicks on a Southwest Airlines flight in November 2024, have been targeted and removed from planes for minor issues that are ignored when they involve white passengers. Dr. Hicks, a clinical pharmacist, was the only black person in her exit row and the only one a flight attendant berated and had ejected for her phone usage, even though she complied and other passengers were also using their devices. In another case from March 2025, a black first-class passenger on Delta, Teresa Hudson Jordan, was removed from a flight with her daughter after a white flight attendant became aggressive because Ms. Jordan simply made eye contact with her. Eyewitnesses were horrified, with one telling Delta the employee treated Ms. Jordan like she was a dog or a slave. These real women didn't have a father who could buy the airline. Their path to justice isn't a 7-minute phone call. It's a long, arduous journey, filing federal lawsuits to hold these corporations accountable for the trauma they endured. It is their courage to speak out that forces airlines to confront systemic bias and implement the very kind of anti-bias training that Maya's father mandated at Global Voyager. Their stories may not have the fairy tale ending, but their struggle is what creates real-world change. CTA, Call to Action. This kind of discrimination happens far too often. What are your thoughts on this? Have you ever witnessed or experienced something similar? Share your stories in the comments below. Your voice matters. And if you believe in stories where justice, even fictional justice, is served and want to support the discussion around these real-world issues, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more content. Conclusion. The story of Maya Washington and Karen Fisher is a modern-day fable. It's a story about the difference between the petty, fragile power an individual can abuse and the true, structural power that can create change. It gives us the satisfaction of seeing prejudice meet an immediate and overwhelming consequence. But as we enjoy that catharsis, it's crucial to remember the reality that inspired it.